Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Victim of drug lords. He clutched onto his mother's arm tightly and staggered out the sliding panels. His mother seemed to be sighing and kept casting her amber eyes downward, as if embarrassed. Jason, I'm telling you that it happened. Don't be daft, mother. Of course, it didn't, he said, with a short, almost nervous chuckle. He stole a sideways glance at his mum, only to be met with lowered eyes. Jason's dirty blonde hair whipped around his ears in the wind. It hadn't been cut in a while, and he desperately needed one. Jason, I need you to remember what happened the night you were admitted, his mother said hurriedly. They had almost reached the sleek black car by now, one that was completely unfamiliar to Jason. Mom, I really don't remember, and I don't want to. On the contrary, Jason could remember parts of the night that he was admitted into St. Clark's Hospital. But he certainly wasn't about to tell his mother that. Broken shards of alcohol bottles scatter the floor. Bright, fluorescent lights dance across Jason's eyes. These flashbacks were all too familiar to Jason. He had woken up hungover one too many times in his life for them not to be. No, it had been the pills that turned the situation sour. He only remembered the cheers around him, edging him on. Now that he thinks of it, the feeling was quite wonderful. He looked around wildly, as if expecting the pills to appear in the parking lot. Jason, honey, what were you thinking about? She murmured softly, as if able to see through his helpless eyes. Just the car. Her eyes grew wide. A bubbly look arose to her face. You remember the car? She exclaimed, now clutching onto Jason's face with a red hand. Her nose looked as if on the verge of growing stalactites, the London icy wind whipping her caramel hair around her shoulders. Jason shrugged, shrinking away from her cold hand. After being hospitalized for this long, human contact seemed alien to him. Just thought it looked familiar, that's all. His mother nodded, as if acknowledging his distastefulness at her touch. She managed to cover up the hurt in her eyes with a glance upward at the sky. She quickly told herself that he needed time. Of course, he wouldn't be the same loving child after this traumatic experience. She was lying to herself, but she needed to know what had happened. All she knew was that he hadn't been home, and when she woke up the next day and his bed was empty, the hospital had called her. She managed to pull herself out of her reverie before he noticed anything. She turned the keys in the ignition and used the loud rumble as a cover to sniffle a stray tear back up. She started reversing out of the parking lot when Jason suddenly yelped.
What?
His mother cried out, stopping the car abruptly with a disgruntled look clouding her soft features. "I'm not wearing my seatbelt." His mother looked baffled for a moment. "I don't remember how," Jason muttered, not making eye contact. "Oh, for God's sake." His mom reached over and buckled him in. She wasn't mad, really. It was just so strange that she had no clue how to act around this new Jason. She briefly thought of how different everything would now be before reminding herself of her emotional state and decided not to. Her eyes trained on the road. She kept her mind on the task at hand for the time being. Jason, on the other hand, was allowing his mind to wander freely, stealing the occasional glance toward his mother. He felt guilty. Of course he felt guilty. But there was this dark pit of resentment towards his mom that he was unable to explain. Maybe it was him, or even his imagination, but she seemed off. "Honey, I just have to stop off at a friend's house to drop some taster cupcakes off." She owned a cupcake business on the edge of town, a successful one at that, too. Now, looking out the window, Jason gave a curt nod, not turning around. The sleek, black car turned sharply into the friend's driveway in a lovely, bucolic setting. It was a 2-story brick house, slathered in white paint and large windows adorning the front. Curtains served as a block, so passers-by would be unable to look inwards. Rose bushes enclosed the low gate that led up to the house. Jason's mother put the car in park and climbed out, taking the bright-colored cupcakes with her. Jason turned around for a split second to look at his mother. The cupcakes caught his eye, reminding him of the multicolored disco lights at the party. He looked away stiffly. The door slammed shut, and the overwhelming heat from the golden rays of sunlight settled over Jason like a thick, woolen blanket. He shivered and curled up on the seat. The silence was comforting. Meanwhile, Jason's mother had rung the doorbell of the house 3 times. She counted down in her head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. "Hello, Barbara," a deep voice said. Standing in the doorway was a tall, bulky man, his unshaven face causing the mere dichotomy between Barbara's, or Jason's mother's, smooth, round face and his rather wrinkly-looking one to become more apparent by the second. However, he didn't appear to be old, just poorly taken care of. Barbara gave him a dirty look and pushed through him and into the house. She now stood in a room or junkyard. It was impossible to tell. She dropped the cupcakes on the floor indifferently. There was only one lamp with lace trimmings turned on, the room relying on this one dim source of light to be illuminated. Rubbish was strewn across the floor, empty cans of soda and cartons of milk. Barbara wrinkled her nose at the mess. "What, too low class for your liking?" he inquired with raised eyebrows. She proceeded to ignore him with a haughty tilt of her head. "Let's get down to business, Tom," she said, arms crossed on her chest. "Barbara, I couldn't give him any heavier ones, okay?" he said with downcast eyes. The teens at the party were already looking at me funny as it was. Lucky I only popped him a few pills. Barbara opened her mouth to interject, but he interrupted her. "Before you ask, I was wearing a mask, and half of them were too high to see my face anyway." "Okay," she nodded slowly. "Look, Tom, we agreed on a price. Only if you could put him in a coma for 3 months, and you achieved only 1 of those months. He wasn't supposed to wake up today. How the hell will I take him home with all the drug shipments lying around?" Her amber eyes blazed alive like fire. She had been subconsciously walking closer to him, as steady as possible, with her red stilettos upon rubbish. Tom sighs and pulls something out of his pocket. "I gave him 5, Barbara. 5! The kid must be crazy to be able to handle all of that." In the dim light, the pills were indiscernible to Barbara. "Tom, which ones did you give him?" Tom walked over to the curtain and pulled one of the curtains right back. He blinked in the sunlight as if he had never seen natural light before. "Ah, that's much better," he grunted. Meanwhile, out of the house, Jason was getting rather hot in the car. His mother had also been gone for an awful lot of time for just dropping off cupcakes. He tried to pull open the door, but it was locked. Weird, he thought. He reached over and unlocked the door from the driver's side. He climbed out carefully, the soft patch of grass beneath him, easing his landing. He shielded his eyes from the bright sun and noticed the pulled-back curtain on the ground floor. Quickly assessing the weird events on his mother's part throughout the day so far, he decided to just take a peek before ringing the doorbell. Jason crept stealthily up the path and through the low gate. He positioned himself in a way that his body would be invisible to anyone in the home by the other drawn curtain. So he was able to lean a little to the right and see what was going on. "I must look very strange to any passers-by," he thought to himself. Stifling a nervous giggle, he tended to laugh when he was nervous. It had gotten him into heaps of trouble during test-taking in school. But Jason couldn't care less about school and their stupid, restrictive rules. Balancing mainly on his right foot, he leaned a little to the right. His eyes were met with quite a scene. But Jason was blind to all when he saw it. The pills, the pure white, and streaks of childish yellow throughout the little pill. His memories rushed back in a torrent, and as he looked at the man, the more familiar the face became. He was the guy who popped the pills for him and then dragged him out of the party. He watched through the clear glass as his mother paid the man. Murder. "Hi, Miranda. I'm officially Officer Zion now, but you can call me Zoe." I just want to ask you a few questions about the recent situation. Zoe, don't say recent situation. It's stupid when we all know that what you mean is murder of your father. You're a feisty kid, Miranda. Thanks. I take it as a compliment. Now that we got that out of the way, do you remember exactly where you were at exactly 6:53 p.m. on July 17th? Gosh, I don't remember. It seems that all of my memories have been wiped from my head. Miranda! Okay. I won't be a brat. But you said yourself that I'm feisty, Zoe. I didn't mean it as a compliment, like you took it. Whoa, ho, ho. She's got an attitude, too. I think we'll get along. So, what's the real answer to my question? I was at the bowling alley with my twin Maya and our best friends Sarah and Diavian. We were about to eat pizza before the next game. It was a tournament. When Gima called and said Dad was shot. Long story short, me and Maya left before we could finish the tournament, and our friends lost. That's what Maya said. But who's Gma? Maya mentioned a grandma, but not a Gma. Oh, right. Maya calls our grandma, but I call her Gma. That's what I called her when I was little, and I couldn't say grandma, and it stuck. All right. How did your grandmother know that your father was hit? She went over to our house to drop off some books that I had left at her house. And that's when she found him. Dead as a doornail, right there on the kitchen floor. You and Maya's stories are matching up, but Maya seemed a lot more emotional about this than you do. She was practically sobbing as she talked to me. Why are you so cool and collected? Zoe, do you seriously not realize that Dad is not Maya and I real dad? That one left us before we were born. Don't have a clue where he's at. When Mama married Rob, Maya warmed up to him immediately. I was not so cooperative. I've never been close to him. Yeah, he's always been there for me, but he never, and will never, now, become a father to me. When I first found out about it all, I was a little upset. But it only took me a day to be over it. Maya, like you said, is still a wreck. Oh, I understand now. So, the first person your grandmother called was you. Not Maya, or your uncle, or any of your aunts? Not even your mother? Yeah. Now remember that this was Mama's mama. She didn't want to hurt Mama right away. Maya would be too sensitive too, and she didn't have any of Rob's siblings' numbers. So, the first one she called was me. Simple as that. Maya told me that your grandmother called you first because she thought you were closest to Rob. You're a bad liar, Zoe. I know my sister like I know my own mind. She and everyone else in our family already knows that I'm not the closest person to Rob. So, well, what did she say? You know, you should be a detective. I did my best lying, and you still got me. That could come handy in a lot of situations if you become a part of the force. Yeah, whatever. What did Maya say? Same thing as you, Miranda. Okay. So, Now what? Can I leave? Please. I need to talk to Maya. She's probably hysterical by now. No, you can't. I'm sorry. There are still a few more questions that I have to ask you. Where was your mother when Rob was so awfully killed? She was at work, at the hospital. They were short-staffed. Okay, this may be a dumb question, but do you know where your aunts and uncle were? Yeah, they were all getting together for a dinner at Olive Garden. Rob was going to go with them. I'm guessing that he must have been on his way out when he was shot. Do you know of anyone who had a grudge against Rob? Miranda, who is it?
Chunsa.
Miranda, was it you?
Ayan.
Why, Miranda?
Hasisasa.
Miranda! I hated him. He abused me. He slapped me, punched me, kicked me. He verbally abused me too. He never did it to anyone else. Your sister knows. She's covering up for you. Yes? Was it self-defense? Or did you do it because you were so sick of it all? Self-defense. Despite all of these lies, I promise you that it was just self-defense. He was trying to hurt me again. He was screaming at me. I went into his room and got into the gun safe. I pulled the gun out. I hid it behind my back while I walked downstairs. In the kitchen, he started to slap me and punch me in the gut and face. After a few minutes, I just shot. I couldn't stop it. It is possible for us to prove that, so you wouldn't be put in juvie. For now, though, you'll have to stay here at the station. I'm sorry, Miranda. I can tell you're telling the truth, but I can't release you until we can prove that. Now that you've admitted that, I understand. All right, come with me. We're going to go talk to Maya. Miranda! Oh, God. You told her, didn't you? Yes, I did, Maya. I'm sorry. It's okay. I still love you. I love you too. All right, girls. Maya, will you tell me the truth of what you know? Of what actually happened? That's the thing. I don't know anything. All I know is what Miranda told me. She shot Rob because he was trying to hurt her again. Then she came to the bowling alley to play in a tournament. That part of our story was true. Okay. I'm going to call your mother to pick you up, Maya. Miranda, you stay with her until I come back. Okay, all right. Accusation. Pounding the tarmac, she bolted down the garden path like an Olympic champion at the start gun. She quickened her pace to an all-out sprint, whilst the springing, graceful steps of 20 miles earlier had long since disappeared. The slapping noise of her flip-flops resonated around the vandalized walls of the housing estate with a clanging echo. She didn't know where she was, nor did she know where she was heading, but she knew she had to get far away from him. Flashing in her eyes, an image of a wedding dress consumed her thoughts. She wanted to tear it and rip it up and throw it at him. Throw it at the man that she could never marry. For God's sake, I'm only 16. I can't get married, she thought. Tears blinded her, and she turned Running as quickly as her long legs could carry her, she bolted down the alley. The pounding noise of her flip-flops reverberated off the walls of the alley, along with a clanging echo that matched her heart, throbbing inside her chest, filling up with acid. Her legs couldn't go on anymore. There she saw it, a barn. It blossomed on the hill amid the grass and the meadow flowers, as if one day it sprung up from some precious seed. I have to go in there, just for a little while, and I will go back home soon, she thought. Opening the door, the smell hit her first as she lugged open the unwieldy, russet-painted door adorned with its tired hinges that creaked like the moaning of cantankerous old men collapsing down. Her legs couldn't carry her anymore. They were filled with toxins, lost in the rhythmic percussions of her steady breathing. She closed her eyes and imagined herself in college and getting a degree. However, that dream seemed so unrealistic, invading her steady breaths. A sound of murmuring pervaded the ambiance, and it was coming from outside. Lifting herself up, she carried herself forward and looked out of the cracks in the door. In the middle, a man was begging on his knees. She saw that his face was bearing with the congealed blood, and his clothes were in an utter mess. However, they showed him no mercy. Surrounding him, a tall man was clutching onto his shirt and ripping it apart. In front of him, a much slender man gave him a red eye. His left eye was swollen. He couldn't be seeing a thing out of that, and his face was more purple than brown. She couldn't look. Her eyes widened and lip trembled. Plummeting onto the floor, the man laid there. He was dead. Calling out from a distance, she could hear a voice telling them to bury him there. Nevertheless, she couldn't see who it was and couldn't seem to recognize this voice. Just like minions, all the men dug holes with shovels and buried the man, leaving no evidence behind. Tears burst forth like water from a dam spilling across her face. The muscle of her chin trembled like a small child. Salty drops fell from her chin, drenching her kurti. Many thoughts pervaded into her mind. She had never seen these people before, even though she lived in a small village in Pakistan. Going towards the way she came, she ran back home. I can't be here anymore, she thought. Howling wildly, the rain lashes the concrete breeze that made her lose control. She ran through a maze of buildings and winding side streets as the sky rumbled, and heavy rain bounced off the cobblestones. A storm smothered the sun, graying the world around her. Drops of rain beat against her skin like hammers. Reaching home, she ran up to her apartment and banged on the door. Getting inside, she ran to her room and closed the door. Overpowering all her emotions, the face of the dead man haunted her, playing the story over and over again, she fell asleep and let her thoughts turn all her dreams into nightmares. Waking up in the morning, she turned on the news and waited. There is a kind of waiting that feels like gentle, onshore breezes kissing salty stones. Nevertheless, this is not what she was feeling today. The news finished, and there was nothing about this missing man. How strange, she thought. Months go on, and there is no sign of this man. Befuddlement infiltrated into her mind. Who was this man? And most importantly, why was he dead? After months of waiting, she saw it. Sitting there on the sofa, she saw it on the news. It was exactly the same man that got killed, and apparently he was missing. So they didn't know that he's dead, she thought. Her mouth pursed and slightly loosed. She looked up at the TV, her eyes fixed, as if this was the only thing that mattered in this world. She had to go, running forward. She had to stop. She wheezes as her burning lungs gasp for air. Her legs feel numb and unsteady, painfully sore. Her throat felt dry, so uncomfortably dry. Clothes' long, blonde-brown hair were clinging onto the tarmac, no different than if she runs through a rainstorm. Unable to go on, she stopped running, gasping for air, but she knew she had to go on. At the corner of the road, there lay walls as thick as the medieval castle, and windows almost as mean. There's no flicker of light within, and the thick wooden doors were closed. Going into the police station, she felt a soft panic growing inside of her. The steps she took were just increasing this amount. It will fade if I back away, but then I have to do this all again another time. It will grow if I let these thoughts swirl into a vortex of stupidity, eating their own tail. Or I can breathe real slow. Let the thoughts leak into the ether and be the real boss of myself, she thought. Approaching the officer, she sat down and told him about what she had seen that night. She told him about the beating and about them burying the dead man. Walking past him, a tall man looked at her, and suddenly she remembered him. It was the same man that clung to his shirt that night. Getting up off her seat, she pointed at the tall man. Sweat trickled down her face and etched marks onto her skin. But she had to do this. Miss, I think you are getting a bit hysterical here. This man works with us, and he would never do such a thing, said the officer. Whist. He examined her up and down. He couldn't understand her. She looked like she was telling the truth. But Hassan couldn't have done this. I do trust him, thought the officer, and he was part of the Commander League, and is soon to get promoted into officer. Telling her to wait in the courtroom, he dismisses her so that he could talk to other members of the department. Just stepping into the courtroom is making her breathing rapid and shallow. She can feel her pulse pounding in her temples. It's a relief to get to the chair. Otherwise, I would have tripped, she thought. Now, only silence lingers in the air. She shivers in the claustrophobic common room and waits for the signal. But a small sigh of anxiety leaps out of her mouth. Tersely, her eyes flicker to the building's whist. She bit her nails to the core, beckoning her to come in. The same officer takes her back into the office. However, they go further in, and it's like nowhere she has actually ever seen before. The fear sits on her like a pillow over her mouth and nose. Doubting her decisions, she tells herself that she had made the right decision. Once again, fear found her. It spoke to her in its cackling voice. It told her legs to go weak, her stomach to lurch, and her heart to ache, as that is what happened to her. She knew she had to keep going, because the truth was just seconds away. Stepping into an exquisite office, she could see the posters hanging and the files stacked up neatly. Getting introduced to the other officers, she sat down, and in the process, she saw the slender man and recognized him immediately, because he was the one who punched the dead man, and instantaneously, she got off her seat. This is the man who punched the dead man. Laughing hysterically, all the officers got up off their seats and surrounded her, just like they did with the dead man. The officer who she met first started talking. "I believe that it is you who killed him," said the officer. "Isn't that right, Commander Abad?" "Yes," replied the commander. The voice sounded so familiar in her head, but why she thought. Then it clicked in. He was voice who told them to bury the dead man. Feeling an overwhelming feeling of disgust, she stood up and went towards the commander. "You did all of this," she snarled. "No, I didn't. Officers, can you please put her behind bars? And that is an order," replied the commander. Locking up her hands, the officers grabbed into her shoulders and took her away. Trying to justify her case, she had no luck. The constricted feeling grew inside of her, as if she was strangled by just the air about her. She glances upward to the surface, and her heart rate rises. The voice of caution whispers softly not to rise so fast, but it can't break through the scream for unfiltered rays and fresh air. From the moment she saw it, it repulsed her. These walls cannot hold a prayer, nor can hold a spirit. And I belong here, she thought. Surrounded by 4 white walls, there was nothing else to do but stare at them, to look at the paint that had started to chip off as time passed, or gouged by other prisoners. Anything to pass time, slowly going mad, theorizing absurd meanings from the wall's blank stare. And this is what I would be doing here, she thought, getting thrown into prison. She screamed and shouted like there was no tomorrow, and flung her arms across the cell. I can't stay here, she thought, and not for something I didn't even do. I did not kill the man. It wasn't me, she shouted. But no one heard her. No one ever did. Tokyo smoke. Possible triggers: intimidation, slight, mention of drugs, and trial. She flicked the wheel of the lighter. Sparks shot up, followed by a small flame which she held to the end of the cigarette dangling from between her lips. Talk. You've got about 5 minutes to convince me to let you live. In that case, mind if I have a cigarette too? That's executioner etiquette, isn't it? Or is that just Hollywood? Just Hollywood, she said, but offered me her pack of cigarettes with her free hand just the same. Her other hand, the one hidden from view inside her jacket, pointed a gun at me. Not of the Hollywood variety. This was a Nambu M57. It would get the job done. Time's ticking. She pulled back the hammer for emphasis. The clicking sent a shiver through my entire being, commanding every single hair to stand at attention. Would you believe me if I said I did it because I love you? I asked, a futile attempt at lightening the mood. The strange thing, though, was that I meant it. Even then, as I looked at her, knowing full well she'd kill me once the smoldering tip of her cigarette reached the filter. Really, Takashi, you did it because you love me. My dad is in jail, Mom's awaiting trial for complicity, and Itsuki is awaiting whether he'll be behind bars for 5 years or 27. I thought you liked Itsuki. I did. But you didn't, I said, while I tried to light the cigarette I kept in the corner of my mouth. It was true. Although I didn't like him at first, he became much like a brother rather than just an in-law after we got married. I didn't look at her as I said it. I was staring at the graffiti frog that had made its appearance on the wall across the train tracks 2 weeks ago. But I knew the face she was giving me. I remembered every line that appeared on her usually smooth skin. You always complained about how he badmouths you to your dad at every opportunity he got. It's the only reason he was going to take over the company. You're smarter, more experienced, and more ambitious than he was or ever would be. It should have been you, and you know it. As for your da, stop. As for your dad, Hina, he chewed it up, I continued. All of it. She poked me with the barrel of the gun to let me know who was in charge here. That's no reason to have them locked up. True, it wasn't, but it was convenient. For years, even before we got married, she had been complaining about all of them. Her dad most of all. Ever since she was a little girl, she had been preparing to take over her father's company when eventually the time would come. She made sure she got the best grades all throughout primary and middle school. Even at university, she had always been at the top of her class, while on the weekend, she inspected contracts for business deals and saved the company millions by spotting hidden clauses. But none of that mattered. Once Itsuki was born, he was all her dad had cared about. I took a deep drag of my cigarette. Marlboro Gold. I always hated lights. They miss that slight scratching sensation when you inhale. Isn't it though? 5 years ago, during Christmas, when your dad announced that Itsuki would take over your position as CEO, you said you never wanted to see any of them ever again. I didn't mean that. Then you didn't mean it either when you repeated it after he gave you the opportunity to develop your skills elsewhere, for your birthday, I suppose? She was angrily fingering her cigarette, flicking of ash that wasn't there. I could only hope she was a little more careful with the trigger. I still had 3 minutes left after all. Mind if I get something from the vending machine? I asked. Last meal and all that. I got up before she could give me an answer and walked over to the overpriced candy dispenser. I fumbled in my pocket for my wallet that wasn't there. "Can I borrow a 500 yen piece, hon?" She didn't move, just raised an eyebrow. "Fine." I looked around, but of course there was nobody around at this hour. The parking lot was empty, but for 4 cars. I turned a quarter turn and forced my elbow through the glass. Ah, motherfucker. That looks a lot less painful in the movies. I took 3 packs of Pocky from the machine, careful not to cut my hand on the sharp edges. Strawberry, matcha, and the regular ones. I wasn't sure which ones you liked best. I thought strawberry, but it could have been matcha as well. "Anyway, here's both," I said, and sat back down on the hood of my beat-up Honda Odyssey. She didn't try to take any when I offered the box to her, just took another drag of her cigarette, which was reaching the halfway mark by now. I always liked the original best myself. I took a drag of my own cigarette before taking it from my mouth and taking a bite of 4 of the chocolate-covered sticks at once. Disgusting. I still don't get it. How can you eat and smoke at the same time? I lifted my shoulders in answer and swallowed before blowing out the smoke I'd been holding up in the air to be carried off by the wind. I never had a problem with eating and smoking at the same time. I knew many people who did, though. Back to what I was saying, I did it for us. In return for the evidence about the shipments of cocaine I gave to Nisanto Corp., they offered me 1 billion yen. 1 billion hina. You'd be rid of your family. We could both quit our jobs and move somewhere else. We'd never have to work again. Tell me that doesn't sound like a dream. You wouldn't have to teach at the high school anymore. No more overtime and compulsory socializing with colleagues. Isn't that what you always wanted? Not like this. They are still my family. And how do you think this will look for me? With my family name ruined? I'll be seen as the daughter of some drugs cartel. My parents weren't like that. They didn't even know about it. The arms of the gold-plated station clock twitched. 10:35. The dial was beautifully decorated with the image of a sun that, in the morning, reflected the sunlight so brilliantly that it seemed to shine itself. Now it was barely visible at all. True, that was on Itsuki, but none of that would have happened if you'd been in charge. Besides, your dad will be out in, 3 years? Your mom's sentence will be even shorter. I doubt she'll even have to do any jail time at all. You just don't fucking get it, do you? You think that's the story the media is going to run with? That it was just my brother and the rest of us had nothing to do with it? Sure, I might not be seen as an accomplice, but I'm part of that family. You didn't ruin just them. You ruined all of us. Honestly, I didn't get it. Maybe it was because I'd never been close to my own family, or just because we were rich now and could go wherever we wanted. You took my last name when we married. No one will associate you with them once we move somewhere else. Where do you want to go? Osaka, or maybe Kochi? You always loved the beach. Hell, we could even go to Europe. You pick a country, and we'll be on the next flight. My eyes were fixed on the entrance of the empty train station. One of the lights illuminating the statue a little to the left of the gates was flickering and drew my attention. It was a statue of a man, but I didn't recognize him. Over the past 6 years I'd been coming here, I'd never taken the time to read the plaque. "You've got about 1 minute left," she said, inspecting the cigarette clutched between her fingers. "I've got to say, you're doing a real bang-up job so far." The gun was still pressed in my side, but it didn't scare me as much anymore. It was just there. "What would you like me to say? That I'll buy you the most beautiful jewelry, a nice car, a big house with a pool? We can have all that if you want. but you already know that. She let another gray cloud escape from her mouth as she nodded. Then she turned to look at me and gave me another look. Go on. We could have kids, a boat. She scoffed. Really? You think having kids will fix this? We tried having kids, remember? It didn't exactly work. We could always adopt them. You used to dream of having a boy and a girl. The boy had to be older, you always said. If we adopt them, you can make sure we get that. She let out a deep sigh. It's almost time, Takashi. Anything you want to say, I suggest you say it now. I took a drag of my cigarette as I thought it over. Your last words are hard to come up with on the spot. I took another drag while staring at the statue again. Who is the statue of? Takashi? Her tone was annoyed more than angry. She prodded me with the gun once more. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I looked back at her. Her eyes didn't have any emotion left in them. No love, no anger, no sadness. I still love you. I'd want those to be my last words. I still love you, I repeated. She shook her head. Then, right as she shot away the still smoldering cigarette butt, the 10:38 train drove into the station. I took a final drag of my cigarette and shot the butt ahead of me. That's my cue, sayonara, robbing hookers. When the cab struck us, Mecca ricocheted off 7th Avenue South and died. Mecca was a stupid nickname for a first-generation Chinese guy from Queens. He always said that any woman would make the journey for his love. Even dead, he looked like a heart attack waiting to happen. Maybe he lost control of the motorcycle because of a heart attack. Overeaters should not be getaway drivers. A siren wailed. There's always a siren in the city. But Mecca was past that siren's help, and me, I didn't want it. I picked up the bag and limped toward the Bowery. Star. At home, I sat by an open window, swatting gnats and biting my tongue as rubbing alcohol seeped into the gashes on my knees. Garbage wafted in the breeze. Everything surrenders during summer in the city. It would be my luck to rob an in-call service, then die from an infection caused by a motorcycle wreck during the getaway. A small bag of clothes and the money sat by the door. I had planned to leave for Port Authority right away, but surrendered to the Chinatown futon instead. When I woke up, I opened another beer and wondered about the protocol for riding a bus cross-country drunk. What the fuck? It's not like it's first-class transportation, or like they'll ask me to drive. I can be drunk, I thought. But I definitely needed to shower because I'd kill anyone who sat next to me on a bus, smelling like I smelled. Jesus Christ, heading west is always such a big deal. Seems like no one ever heads west without someone dying, I thought. I still think that. Mecca drove like a maniac the first night we met at a bar in the East Village. I needed someone to buy me drinks. He said he'd buy me dinner too. The bike flew toward the West Village like a shooting star that sizzled to its demise at an outdoor cafe full of hopefuls searching for a spark or some such fuckery. He slurped a lot of fettuccine. I sipped a lot of Chianti. You were a Soho boomer? I couldn't care less. Really, I couldn't. But he was buying, so I pretended to care. Yeah, a loft baby. My parents own a laundromat in Flushing, and they gave me money to invest in a .com, which went under. Then they gave me money to open a skate shop in the East Village. It's high roller. I ball. You skate? Fuck no, but I don't have to. I just have to make sure others do. What does your beautiful self do all day? Temperature. As a receptionist mostly. I cater sometimes. I studied art, painting and drawing. A few years ago, I was featured as part of a new artists show at a gallery. No one bought anything. Then 9/11ths, the gallery closed. Hey, maybe you can draw some designs for the shop. You sure you're not hungry? Eating kept me from getting sloppy drunk and forgetting. I raised my glass to not eating. He pointed his fork. Sauce splattered my nose. You need to paint and shit. Be an artist and shit. Let's make you one and shit. Star. A few months later, his shop closed. Temp jobs ceased. It was the second September 11th death toll. Mecca, a baller no more, depended on family money to survive while buying me groceries, carrying the bags up 6 flights while I rearranged cabinets to make room for all the things he liked to eat while hanging out at my place. You like these? God, oh God, I love the creamy center. Have one, he said, ripping open a plastic-wrapped cake with his teeth. I shook my head. Not eating meant not keeping up with time or when I last left the apartment. No work meant no reason to leave. After 97 years in New York City, the insurance office where I temped succumbed to 2 planes that didn't hit it. Catering dried up. I wondered if there was somewhere else and wondered how long until the rest of the country wondered if there was somewhere else. Everyone said it was all Bush's fault, but he didn't have enough sense for it to be all his fault. The world wanted to blow us up. Someone blow me up, I thought. I just wanted to disappear more than anything. I was so far behind on rent, I didn't think winning the lottery could pay it off. Mecca went to the bathroom. I opened the window. Outside, restaurant supply and lighting stores floundered alongside bars in the wild frontier remnants of Bowery bums and SROs. In the 1700s, the Bowery sprawled with green. Giant bugs swam through the marshland. Natives hunted. Europeans came to see what's what. Natives became red. Europeans became white. Everyone saw the colors of the faces instead of the colors of the land. The swamps dried up and the buildings built up. People died. People were born. They died. Bugs survived. I flicked one into the frontier. A little girl looked up and flipped me off. Mecca approached from behind, sniffing my hair. I moved to the futon. He got another cake. Hey, so, do you remember how I told you that sometimes I go to that place in Midtown? Well, I talked to the owner. She needs help and you need rent. Help at the poker game? Like serving drinks? Or dealing cards? Yeah, well, funny thing is, there's no poker. It's pussy. It's an in-call service. My laughter offended Mecca. It's not funny. Sorry, I never realized you were that lonely. He shrugged. It's not loneliness, it's convenience. You keep turning me down and you know a man like me has needs. Don't piss me off. I just bought you groceries and gave you money and didn't even ask you to jerk it or anything. Right. I should be thankful. It's in a big duplex-style apartment on the first floor of a gated brownstone. Very safe. She needs someone to book clients. You're a receptionist, so why not? Oh, yes, well, I moved here to be a receptionist, you know. Everyone knows artists need day jobs before hitting it big, and you'd only work a few shifts a week. The rest of your days are free to paint. The money's great. You can buy art supplies. All the girls tip the bookers. Some of the clients do too. I do. Just meet the owner. So I did. Star. 2 days later, I met Tiffany's Diamond at a Mexican place in Hell's Kitchen. Her skin reminded me of an avocado. She spewed guacamole when she spoke, which was often. You know how it is. Us career women can't trust small-time bitches with the books, plus we gotta watch our men. Jesus, ain't it awful? How many times did one of my true loves spend my money, then turn around and tell me to fuck someone for more? Glad I run things now. I really did not have a reply for that, so sipped my beer. hoping a nod and a smile sufficed. Cops and politicians are some of my best clients. I have top-notch security, too. You'll be safe. Coming in as a phone girl shows initiative. And if you want, you can take some clients, too. You got a not-so-hard look that men like for the girlfriend requests. All my girls look like whores that have a side job as gladiators, though you and I both know a man will fuck this here burrito if nothing else is around, she said, bean juice dripping down her chin. Just keep it in mind. For now, I'll show you how to know who's a legit client and who's not. If you keep things classy, you know, keep the towels and soap stocked so the girls can wash their pussies, we'll get along just fine. She smiled, trying to use one of the tortilla chips as a toothpick, then ate it. That might be the moment I decided that I hated her. Tiffany's diamond, a hooker without a heart of gold. Star. She used an intercom for clients, and they had to provide a password after buzzing the apartment. The work was okay for a while, but I kept wondering about that somewhere else. When I realized that she didn't use cameras, and she didn't plan on replacing the security guy she fired for eating her leftover guacamole, I decided to rob her. I knew where she kept the cash. I knew where she kept her guns and knives. I knew Mecca would help me because his first-generation parents were tired of his antics. They worked hard. None of us did. Star, Mecca, and I waited by the gate for someone to exit. Then we waited for someone else to come out of the building. We acted like we'd been looking for a key, then walked in, sliding ski masks over our heads as we approached the door. When one of the girls brought out the garbage, we forced our way in, shoving everyone into a bedroom. Tiffany's reached under the couch cushion for her gun. I knew the gun wasn't there because I moved all the weapons the last time I worked. Mecca shoved everyone into a bedroom and told them sit on the floor, heads down, while I emptied out the cash from the hiding spots. I had to keep an eye on Mecca too, because he was so nervous that he forgot to pack 2 helmets. The gun shook in his hand. We had agreed not to talk. Then he talked, and even worse, he said my name. Let's go, Lori. I knew Tiffany's hurting. As we ran out the door, she said, I will blow off their fucking heads. But we had her guns, and we were gone. Star. I never said anything to Mecca about saying my name. There was no time. I hoped he didn't know. I hoped he died a hero in his own mind. He thought he was helping me, and he died thinking I'd show him around California. And honestly, it was my day off. And I'm pretty short, so it's not like it would be that hard for even Tiffany's to figure out I was behind one of the ski masks. So there I sat, everything done poorly, planning a new life. The sunlight bouncing off an illegal cable hookup on a roof across the street got my attention. Soon, such second-rate sunsets would be a memory. I decided to shower. California, here I come, right back where I never started from. I sang to myself, painting on the beach, working in a bar. It could be good for me. Gonna do it right this time, I thought. The thought didn't last. A sharp whistle pierced the air. It sounded like a piano falling in a cartoon. I ran to the window. Traffic lights blinked. People screamed. On the sidewalk, a man and woman cowered. What was that? The woman said. We should call 911, he replied. I'm calling. Are you calling? My call's not going through. It's September 11th again. My phone works. Besides, it's August. Can't be September 11th. Then it's August 14th. August 14th is the new September 11th. An old man stumbled off a stoop. I got a weather radio. It's a power outage. Other cities got hit too. I'd rather go through 9/11 again. At least I didn't lose my window unit then. It's 900 degrees, and I gotta listen to you monkey fuckers. A woman walked toward the old man. You sick son of a bitch. My mother died in the first tower. Aw, I got a dead mother too. Typhoid fever epidemic of 1812. The arguing continued, but I had no time for it. I wished I could take a plane, but they would be backed up for hours now, and all the 9/11 security made them too risky anyway. A power outage meant no subway and a cab nightmare. Maybe I could hitch a ride to Port Authority and just wait for the buses to start rolling again. I had already robbed someone and watched Mecca die. Hitchhiking was the least of my worries. Still, I had left the guns with Mecca. Suddenly, my landline rang. Hello. I keep saying that cell phones are just a fad. Look, here I am calling you from a payphone during a blackout while everyone else is jamming up the towers. People act like those things are something, but mark my word, they'll be gone by 2007. There's nothing else you can do with them but listen to them fail during an emergency. Cigarette smoke never sounded so serious. That was odd to me, as that serious sound was coming from a woman who reminded me of an avocado. But I knew I was in trouble. Is it in a suitcase? Bus or train? I always wondered why you never got any new clothes with all the money I paid. Now I know it wasn't enough. You got greedy tastes. You're a fine one to talk. All the money you make, you still look like Jersey. Jersey's got rents and restaurants just like the city. Sometimes they're better than what you find here. Matter of fact, I went out there to replace some hardware. The people I know in Jersey got great hardware. And now that my favorite Sopranos extra has driven back to the city with me, a blackout hits. Our hardware works great in a blackout, though. How did you get this number? The question should really be whether or not I shoot that old man who keeps screaming about his air conditioner before or after I shoot you. The phone went dead. Kneeling under the window, I scanned the street and saw Tiffany's standing by the payphone next to the bodega with her hair blowing like straw in the breeze. A guy who actually did look like an extra on The Sopranos got out of a black sedan. Tiffany's had the nerve to put out her cigarette, then chew on an ice cream cone as they crossed the Bowery to kill me. I grabbed a knife and stood to the right of the door, unlocking it slowly. I cracked it just enough to see what was what. For the first time in a long time, I felt hungry. It took a while, but heavy pants finally echoed up the stairs. Why do you always have to hire people that live in 6th floor walk-ups? The man said, leaning on the banister. Good God, I can't kill anyone until I catch my breath, Tiffany said. I flung open the door with the blade down and plunged the knife into the extra's back. He tumbled down the stairs. I turned and came face to face with that ice cream cone. Only then did I realize I needed 2 knives. Killing isn't as easy as it looks in the movies or even on the news. It requires planning to do it well. Tiffany's didn't even have her gun out, and she was dumb enough to warn me she was coming. But living as I live now, I know that the criminal mastermind is a thing of fiction. Most criminals suffer from egos, not masterminds. Crime or life just comes down to thinking you can take and eat and move on. I decided that I was ready to move on and find out about that somewhere else. I shoved her against the wall. White powder glistened on the edge of her nostril. The ice cream fell to the floor, which probably infuriated her more than anything. She growled. I growled, sinking my teeth into her nose. Her nails pierced my scalp. I pulled back and wrapped my hands around her neck, then squeezed until she died. Maybe I should say more after all these years, but that's how I think of it, because I can't think about it. I ran back into the apartment and grabbed the money and bag. I realized that I needed something to help carry them because of the blackout, so I grabbed my mini grocery cart. If I could roll a mini grocery cart From the Bowery to Port Authority, I could find that somewhere else. I told myself to put 1 foot forward. I didn't look at the extra when I passed him in the hallway. I just kept moving. Manhattan's easy to walk, I thought. The blackout won't last forever. I can disappear, I told myself, wiping sweat from my eyes. All I have to do is endure one hell of a bus ride with a few stops in between. Around 6th and 8th, a bodega owner stood in front of his bodega, passing out all sorts of goodies. He waved a can of beer and a sandwich at me. "Where are you going?" "I'm disappearing," I said. "How wonderful for you. Here, you have to take something. I can't run the register or anything. Just take it." Other bodega owners did the same thing, so when the buses started rolling again, I did ride drunk. I managed to disappear from everyone but myself. I have moved so many times, looking for some place. Wherever I go, I waft in with a look like a girlfriend and leave a stench like garbage. Neptune's lair. When I met her, word on the street was that Esme was beyond help. Her friends called her crazy and borderline. By the religiously inclined of former times, she might have been thought of as demon-possessed. During drunken fits, she'd get into fist fights or threaten to throw herself from freeway overpasses. She walked a thin line and repeatedly upset rumors of her demise, taking immense pride in being what she called stronger than dirt. She had a breathalyzer in her car. 2 years ago, she'd overturned her Hyundai in an incident where she was discovered to be 3 times over the legal blood alcohol limit. She made financial ends meet by renting her body out for clinical trials, hoping the entire time that she'd taken placebos instead of the experimental medications upstart pharmaceutical companies produced for everything from bipolar disorder to angina. There were times she'd come home from one of these lab rat money runs with side effects, bad ones, but they'd eventually subside and she'd make jokes about how at least she hadn't become the victim of sudden death syndrome. That Esme, tougher than dirt, as resilient as rubber. Even though she smoked all my stuff, drank all my wine, and frequently resorted to flings with Little Dicky, a former boyfriend I suspected provided her with something I couldn't, I felt something for her. I made what I called minimum rage, flipping beef patties and assembling burgers at a late-night boardwalk diner called Cracker Jack's. Before the week was up, with Esme's and my drug debts, I'd be begging tourists for change to buy spare cigarettes. For a while, we resided in a tent on the rooftop of a building where Desmond Tutu Phillips, a friend since freshman year in high school, was the apartment building manager. Desmond risked losing his job for giving Esme and me a key to the restricted access rooftop. Despite our unconventional ways, he had the patience of Jesus with us. Even so, I'd still piss over the side of the building, and Esme would relieve herself where and whenever convenient. When we got too grungy, we'd take care of our hygiene needs at the showers meant for beachgoers. At night, we read copiously by battery-operated lantern light and shared a predilection for somber stuff. Our favorites were Rimbaud, Baudelaire, Camus, and Hamid. When we tired of the Cracker Jack's grub I'd bring to our squatter pad, we'd get high and end up eating red velvet cake and whatever else she'd send me to shoplift from the supermarket, a 10-minute walk away. On the stroll back home, paranoid from the nearly toxic cosmic kush, and with my backpack stuffed with our pilfered renegade sustenance, I'd be startled by the sounds of passing cars, thinking a cop was sooner or later bound to stop me for stealing Esme's and my daily booze and bread. Although I feared the cops, I always suspected my weed paranoia was caused by a much deeper-seated guilty conscience. I should have confronted Little Dicky a long time ago. Also, I had left my mother's side when I felt her senescence was becoming a burden. There's no way I had the resolve or character to be the caregiver for an aging parent. When I confessed these thoughts to Esme, she'd dismiss my concerns and say I needed to stop overthinking things. I remember once when Esme and I were walking home from a party, she said, pointing to a couple of graffiti-spraying gangbangers, "Javier, I'm scared. That guy with the Supreme hoodie has a gun." He pointed it at me, never sure whether she really meant such things, but fueled by drug and alcohol-induced courage, I confronted the guy. "Hey man," I said to the one Esme had referred to. "You know what I am?" "A janky spick boy with a death wish," he answered with a sneer. "No, I'm a delinquent out to get delinquents. What you gonna do with that heater?" Turns out he didn't have a gun, just another can of neon spray paint, but he wasn't overly enthused by the tete-to-tete I had with him. He and his friend didn't kick my ass, but Mr. Supreme sprayed me in the eyes with the paint. Esme started mouthing off to him, but even though I was partially blinded, I pulled her away for fear that we'd both get battered. Those are the kind of stupid things I'd do for Esme, but the important thing to me was she would call me things like her ballsy little soldier and lavish me with affection after I'd go out on a limb for her. I put blood, sweat, and tears into the relationship, and rarely did I think it wasn't worth it. The end of our star-crossed romance began after Esme came back from the free clinic where Dr. For the People, Randolph Hamilton, told her she had cervical cancer. After she heard the diagnosis, Esme became determined to go out with a bang. She began visiting Little Dicky more frequently. She demanded I steal tequila instead of wine from the supermarket, and when she drank the Patron I'd bring to our squatter's abode, her temper became hair-trigger sensitive. The only respite I'd get from her gloomy rages would come when I'd invite her to the beach when the moon was full. Apparently, Little Dicky had something against doing things that smacked of romance or chivalry with her. Moonlit midnight swims in the Pacific were one such pastime Dicky didn't seem to have a taste for. On the nights Esme and I'd sink our toes into the wet sand while the moon's phantasmagorical light reflected onto the dark side of the earth, she'd momentarily forget about her terminal diagnosis. She'd also forget about her mortal condition whenever we'd watch movies at the rooftop squat. I don't know if it's the case with most people, but when I'm high and watching a good flick, I'll hear messages in the movie's dialogue. I'll also interpret anything someone says out loud about the film to have personal relevance. I've heard these phenomena are called thoughts of reference by those in the field of mental health. Schizophrenics have them, but I guess when I'm high, I might get a little schizophrenic. Makes me wonder why I keep smoking the Cosmic Kush. But one night, while viewing Scarface with Esme for the 5th or 6th time, she said something along the lines of, "God, it's just so good. I can't get enough of it." To my cognitively distorting and high mind, Esme wasn't talking about the film's extended denouement where Tony Montana gets shot by his sister, then exterminates a battalion of rival narco-gangster cockroaches before he ends up floating face down, bloodied and bullet-riddled in his "The World Is Yours" Miami drug boss mansion. No, Esme wasn't talking about the film. My mind interpreted her statement as referring to her relationship with Little Dicky. Before Montana gets the shotgun blast in the back that finally does him in, Esme exclaimed, "Jesus, we all know he's doomed." When she said that, I couldn't help but believe that she was referring to our friend and benefactor, Desmond. If for whatever reason Desmond was doomed, Esme and I would soon be off the rooftop and into the street, nowhere for a loving couple to be, especially when one in the pair has terminal cancer. I didn't know whether Esme's words would attract fate, but I knew that her despair was making her behave more erratically. She started to break down in tears when she'd think of having to be holed up in a hospital or hospice, awaiting the inevitable during the last stages of her disease. That night after the movie, and while coming down off the perception-altering shrubbery, I decided to take a course of action. The next morning, I bought 2 tabs of acid off Tripster Todd, a boardwalk dealer of LSD and various other hallucinogens. I told Esme that we'd go for a swim at the beach after I got off my shift at midnight. We walked to the beach at close to 2 a.m. On the way there, I picked a purple flower, whose name I didn't know from a garden in front of a well-tended house. As we walked, I put the flower in Esme's hair. The moonless night sky's inkiness was blinding. The tide was low, and we had to walk a good distance to the water. There was no one on that portion of the beach except for us. As she dipped down into the waters ahead of me, Esme expressed her gratefulness for not having any open wounds, given that a recent outbreak of carnivorous bacteria made coastal immersions risky for bathers thusly exposed. Before going waist-deep into the water, I surreptitiously took the 2 tabs of LSD I'd bought from Tripster. After letting the acid dissolve, I gave Esme a prolonged French kiss. In little time, my vision, swayed by the acid, started playing tricks on me. Although there was virtually no light on the beach, my eyes summoned a warm, radiant glow in the heavens above. "Jav, I feel funny," said Esme. I splashed her with water and told her that she was okay, that everything was going to be okay. I knew what I had to do. I played out a dialogue in my mind where I said, "You need to confess," and asked her why she was always going to see little Dickie. In my mind, she responded, "My lips are sealed." "That's exactly what they aren't," my courageous imagination told her. We were up to our solar plexuses in the ocean. I took hold of her shoulders and dunked her beneath. She came up, laughed, then, giddy from the acid, childishly said, "Jav, I'm going to die." I said, "No, you're not, love. You're going to live forever. Remember, Esmeralda Lucero is tougher than dirt." I repeated the dunking gesture, this time less playfully, taking a fraction of a second longer than Esme deemed comfortable for her to be under the tide. The 3rd time I dunked her was even more forceful. She struggled in my grip under the water. I crossed a threshold. She freed herself from my hold, surfaced, then said, "What do you think you're doing?" More in the form of an exclamation than a question. I smiled. The white of my teeth infuriated Esme more. "It's not funny, you hijo de puta. Why do I feel like I'm tripping?" She screamed before trying to dig her nails into my eyes. The time had arrived. I knew the cure. I put her neck into a vice-like hold in the crook of my right elbow and dunked her under the dark waters again. Her arms flailed about. She tried to kick, she writhed, but I held fast. I could hear her submerged cries, but they were muffled and accompanied by an up-bubbling of exasperated air. Her writhing gradually slowed down until she managed a last, weak exhalation and final spasm, and then yielded her spirit to the Pacific Ocean. I left her body floating where I had drowned it. Even though no one had heard or seen what transpired, I was still tripping on the acid, and the walk back to Desmond's apartment building was haunted by bogeymen and illusionary images of people pointing fingers and whispering accusations. I climbed the stairs to the rooftop where my unhoused person's hovel was located, lit a cigarette, and was overcome by an urge to write a song. I took out my notebook and a pen and started scribbling. Moonless night, world's delight, me, you drowning, out of sight, we fear most. Give up the ghost, but before we do, let's make a toast on our tongues, still feeling young. Summon moon and avoid the sun. We'll be scared, 'cause we've dared. Court Pluto, in Neptune's lair. I put the pen down, satisfied with the verses, and thought of the poor and beaten down, of the fact that we are all victims to the onslaught of implacable and incorrigible time. I thought of what could have been, and of what now would never be between Esme and me. After another cigarette, I laid on my rooftop sleeping bag, unable to forgive myself, despite my best intentions, for the simple thing, the merciful thing I'd done. Before I knew it, I had cried myself to a still and unrepentant slumber, the sleep of both the wolf and the lamb, of the innocently voracious and the imperfectly innocent farmhouse dinner. Christina wondered how long she should wait before she reported her husband missing. 2 days seemed too soon, but a week too long. Who would take a whole week to notice their husband missing? She held her hot cocoa in both hands, sipping it slowly as she watched the gentle flakes drifting through the pine trees. The first cold snap of the season had come with several inches of snow, and it covered the ground in a white, soft blanket. She loved being alone in her kitchen, and had spent the morning rearranging her utensils, the pots, and her knives for practical use. Everything had a place, and a place for everything. Christina looked around her small house, the contour of her entire world. She didn't miss him. The house felt lighter, cleaner since he walked out the door that last time. Did she even want him back in her life? She frowned. She had to get back to work. Mick's words rang in her head. "Stop standing, get working." Mick couldn't abide her standing still. Everyone and everything on the farm had to have a use. Mick, of course, accepted. He could sit around and drink, complaining the world had it in for him. She put on Mick's thick flannel jacket, much better than her own, only slightly too large, and checked on the chickens, tossing seeds to them, then the few sheep, all safe in the barn. She looked around at what needed fixing, potential improvements. New opportunities for the old equipment clicked through her mind, adding to the long list. She lifted a bale of hay high to drop in the feed chute. The years of farm labor had made her body strong. Once back inside, she looked in the refrigerator. The meat she had pulled out from the deep freezer had thawed, and so she added spices, putting it in the oven with yellow potatoes and peas. She wiped the clean, pristine counter, then looked around at the sparkling kitchen, frowning at the lingering cigarette smoke smell, still recognizable underneath the pine sol she had dosed the room with. It had been 3 days since Mick had walked out of the door, and that seemed about right. She sat down at the kitchen table in front of the phone on the wall, smoothed her faded blue gingham dress as if they could see her, then called the police. "My husband Mick is missing," she said, surprised at the real tears rolling down her cheek. She did miss Mick, his warm body and his gentle laugh. She missed him like she missed being a little girl when she would wear pretty dresses, dreamt of a prince to marry, and her future loomed bright on the horizon. Except those days were gone, just like Mick. What if they actually found him? She had new dreams now. Coffee, officers, or hot cocoa, maybe. Christina's voice met the officers as they walked into her warm kitchen, a powder of snowflakes on their dark uniform jackets. They introduced themselves as they came in. Detective Sergeant John Maloney. Tall and thick with a jaw like a dump truck, he stomped his feet on the stoop before ducking into the house. Behind him, slight and pretty, with her blonde hair pulled back tight in a bun, Officer Kelly Marks stepped inside. "That's quite a road to get here. Lucky we had my 4x4 Bronco. Your little Jap car would have never made it through." D.S. Maloney's voice boomed in the small house, looking over at Officer Marks, who just grimaced at the repeated joke. Thanks. D.S. Maloney took a coffee, and Officer Marks took a hot cocoa with a Gracie has. I speak English. So, you are Christina Santos, and you called about a missing person. A Mickey Mouse, maybe? D.S. Maloney laughed with both thick hands on his hips, his elbows waving, the international flags of asshole. D.S. Maloney snorted at his joke. Both women's eyes stayed on the floor. His name was Mick, Christina said in a low voice. Mick, your husband, has been missing. Officer Marks looked down at a small, pristine notebook. For 3 days. Yes. Christina wiped her eyes with her apron. Mick went out, said he wanted to get something from town, but his truck is still here. Sometimes he goes to a neighbor's house or the bar in town. Oh, I don't know. Christina clenched her apron over and over. Did you look for him or call anyone? D.S. Maloney barked. I don't know who to call. I don't know his friends, other than the men at the Iron Door in town. I called the bar, but he wasn't there. Okay, do you have a description? Officer Marks held her pen at the ready. We can call the local hospitals, other police stations to see if he has turned up. Well, he's a bit taller than me, has dark hair and thicker. She put her arms out, forming a large belly. And his face? Christina squinted one eye closed and turned her face into a deep scowl. Oh. Office Marks turned away with a frown. Mean mug. Any idea where he could be? D.S. Maloney looked in a cupboard, as if the missing man had been put with the canned peaches instead of the tins of sardines. Maybe he was walking in the forest, chasing a dog or a deer, and he fell and broke his leg. Christina mimed her leg collapsing, hopping, and then in the snow. She wrapped her arms around herself and shivered. Or a wolf got him. Her strong hands turned into a biting wolf, attacking Officer Marks's arm, who leapt back from the snarling, yapping fingers. But most likely, he'd just run off, tired of me. Christina's chin fell into her chest. D.S. Maloney and Officer Marks caught each other's eyes. I'll check outside. You look around in here. D.S. Maloney leaned into Christina's face. It's okay we look around, right? Nothing to hide. Officer Marks meandered through the house, rubbing her finger on a shelf and then looking at her dustless glove. She opened a tall door in the kitchen, then her eyes went wide. She pulled a broom out of the closet. What's this? D.S. Maloney walked back in. The new snow covered any possible evidence. I found the meat freezer. You're well stocked for the winter, so that's good. I didn't see much else. Officer Marks held up a well-used broom with dark red coloring on the end of the handle. My broom, Christina offered. Is this blood? D.S. Maloney took the broom, his eyes blazing. Sometimes. Christina's hands squeezed her apron against sharing her secret shame. Mick used that if the kitchen wasn't clean enough. Officer Marks looked around the kitchen with her eyes raised. We're going to test this for blood. You want to change your story? No, you can see. Christina pulled her hair back to show a gash, dried blood still dotting the wound. I cleaned up the rest. She collapsed in a chair. Mick used to be helpful, but we lost so many sheep with the scrapie outbreak. Then with his drinking, I wasn't allowed to leave, just work the farm. Mick wanted me to do so much, but he did nothing but drink and curse and hit. Christina fell into deep sobs, her face in her apron. He just wasn't any use, don't you see? D.S. Maloney looked away, then his nose lifted into the air. Well, that smells good. What is that? Christina looked up. That's dinner. I thawed some meat. I needed to cook it. She stood up and looked in the oven. It's done now. I can't eat it all. I had hoped Mick would come home for dinner, but Christina pulled a long roast out of the oven, the meat pulling back from the bone. Rosemary and thyme filled the kitchen with the aromas from the well-cooked meat. Do you want some? We can't let anything go to waste on a farm. D.S. Maloney looked at Christina, his eyes narrow, and then smiled. Heck yeah, I'm starving. Sitting at the table, he had a large napkin tucked into his shirt collar, a knife in one hand, a fork in the other. We can't do any more searching now. It is too dark and cold. He belched, loudly. This is real good, by the way. I have an idea. He pointed his fork at Officer Marks. Back at the station you call around, hospitals, other police stations. I bet he's in someone's drunk tank sleeping off a bender. Good idea, sir. Officer Marks's eyes swept the ceiling before turning to Christina. I thought this would be lamb, since you have a sheep farm, but it is something different. Christina looked up. Her mouth dropped open before she clenched her teeth. Pig, she muttered. A little tough, but pretty good, I agree. She stood up and went to her refrigerator. I have more. She pulled out several bundles and rolled and taped butcher paper. Here is some ground meat. I can't use it all. You should take it. D.S. Maloney pulled off his napkin as he stood up and took the packages. We'll contact you when we have anything further. He nodded and left the kitchen. Officer Marks jumped up to follow D.S. Maloney outside. Sir, there was obviously a fight in that kitchen. I read a story once about a wife who killed her husband with a frozen lamb chop and then fed it to the officers who came to interview her. Do you think? D.S. Maloney narrowed his eyes at Officer Marks before shaking his head. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. There is no body. No, he just left. Not that I blame him. She's not all there. He spun his finger around his ear. Officer Marks stepped back inside. Christina stood at the sink, washing a large meat cleaver. We're going to go. Thanks for the meal. Officer Marks headed for the door, then turned back. You know, I had the craziest idea that you killed your husband with that meat you served us to get rid of the evidence. Christina's mouth dropped open. Oh, that would have been so much easier. Christina shook her head and leaned back into the sink to get to work on the dishes and her new life, Diary of a Serial Killer. How might one endure the silent and secluded nature of winter? Be the bear, enter a deep cave, and dream, dream, dream. Jacqueline Suskin. I probably shouldn't be writing this, but oh fucking well. When the most precious thing lodged in your heart is ripped out and crushed by an unthinking alcoholic asshole driving with a revoked license, you do things, unimaginable things, and not just burying your beloved 8-year-old son, which was not on my shitty life bingo card, OBVs. But life wasn't shitty before. The word should be capitalized, before. No, better yet, the before. Because now, life was rent in two, forever separated by the gaping maw of rage. The before and the after. A fissure of overwhelming grief that quickly cracked, allowing the steaming, boiling lava to emerge from her core. Oh, he would pay, that drunken dickhead. His money won't protect him, not from me. They gave her the codename Mama Bear, but he never imagined that she was holed up in a cave. On a hunch, he came out to the Pennsylvania woods at night, alone. Common sense and the FBI handbook would label his actions reckless at best and suicidal at worst. But he didn't fear for his safety. Mama Bear targeted a certain type of prey. Except for being a male, he didn't fit her profile. Funny, they were both profilers. October snuck up behind him, picking up the crisp air, tossing it around. Playing offense, it switched tactics, threw it toward his face, temporarily snatching his breath. He continued to climb, quiet, crunching under his boots, allowing the patches of clearing and the light of the frosted full moon to guide his steps. He'd reach the cave no matter what, so the easy way was the best way. He put his hand in his front pocket, felt the crumpled page of a diary. The paper crinkled like the fallen leaves underfoot. It was mailed to him at his office, this one, and the other entries. He had the sense to turn in the others, but not this one. Well, most of the others. She vowed to herself that she would abstain from killing for a month, or so she wrote. By his accounts, it was day 30. He hoped her undated entry referred to October. At least he would have a day. One day. It was easier than I thought. I would say too easy. But that motherfucker mowed down my baby like a shirtless, beer-bellied jagoff, hurrying to cut the grass before the Buccos game. Maybe it shouldn't be hard. Justice shouldn't be hard. Not in the semblance of a fair world. Leaves skittered and scurried around his legs, tumbling over each other like playing squirrels. He stopped, inhaled deeply. He loved the smell of fall, that last exhale of trees mixing with ripe decomposition. I'm so glad I live in a world of Octobers. He smiled at the memory of his sister quoting Anne Shirley, not so long ago. His smile fell. Not so long ago, yet forever ago. Tragedy has a way of altering time, elongating some parts and compressing others. He looked up through the lattice of bare limbs, a web of gnarled fingers, the indigo sky stitched with rhinestones. Did the stars foretell it? It was the mutable signs of the zodiac: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, BTK, Dahmer, Bundy, the ones born at the end of a season, not in the middle, like the fixed signs, like Scorpio, like her. You'd think one was enough, but it wasn't. I realized AA was just one of many. Sure, I settled my score, but what of the other moms? South many, blights, diseases walking the earth, infecting others with their cruelty, their carelessness, their capriciousness. Someone had to bring order, just like Melville Dewey did to book classification. 000 to 999. He considered turning around to walk back down the hill. He turned, but didn't move. In the distance, the twinkling lights of downtown Pittsburgh weaved a terrestrial constellation of bridges, one-way traffic, and sundry skyscrapers. The Steel City, just like its people, metal backbones, gritty guts, and honest hearts. He craved a sandwich from Primanti's. Any sandwich. That was the last time he saw her. At Primanti's, the original one. He wasn't one to second-guess himself. His mom drummed it into their heads from the cradle. Trust self first, last, and only. First, last, only. Thanks to the internet and social media, it's not hard to find someone, or their misdeeds. What was once relegated to a diary like this is now vomited onto Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for all to see. Many lap it up, probably because it makes them feel less uncomfortable about their own stupid decisions and meaningless lives. Here for the mindless braggart. Many blowhards make for less research when it comes to this side gig. He cracked his neck, onward and upward, one foot in front of the other, crunching leaves, whipping wind, snapping twigs. Up, up, up he climbed. He was getting close. His hand reached towards his front pocket. Again. He read the page dozens of times, just like the rest. He couldn't help it. Just touching the deckle-edged diary page brought clarity and understanding. He had to find her first. Could it be that easy? I think this might be my last entry. I knew it was a bad idea. No, make that bad idea. To write things down. But writers write. Fish swim. Birds fly. Dogs bark. Writers write. And mama bears? Well, unless you're bent from birth, looking at you, mutable signs, no one sets out to be a killer. Or, as I like to differentiate, a remover. Scrooge, or Dickens, had it partly right. Decrease the surplus population. He just needed to add of assholes. Decrease the surplus population of assholes. Dangerous, foul, hollow assholes. He neared the ridge. He was getting close. He pulled out the wrinkled diary page. He couldn't help it. The moon illuminated the page, but he couldn't make out the words. Strange glyphs, occultic squiggles, just like those found on the astrological charts she used to interpret. Meaningless symbols to the untrained eye, but metaphysical gold to the mystic. He didn't need to be able to read the entry. He had it memorized. The cave. He could see the entrance. Dark, yawning, an inky maw, just like her rage. He reached into the other pocket for his flashlight. She beat him to it. Her flashlight shone on the ground ahead so as not to blind him. Hey sis. Hey bro. What took you so long? The thumping. The museum's intercom crackled on with train station static. Hello, Norval Museum. I ducked at the sound, trying to escape it, cracking my eardrums. He spoke fast, like a sports announcer, at the most critical part of the game. Welcome to your nightly broadcast from your favorite night guard. As always, we must get the boring things out of the way before we have some fun. His voice trailed up and down with the meter of a radio host. It was well practiced. If there is any other human in this fine establishment other than your Steve and Linda, remember, you are stuffed. If there is anyone else here, you will be arrested, and you could be charged with robbery as you are on the premises 30 minutes after closing. He sounded way too excited for his long night shift. So, if there are any other living souls in this building, we get to start my favorite game. Hide and go, speak. I'll count to 30, and then the game starts. Have fun. I could hear the big generators for each light system shutting off, their cranks getting closer each time until the painting in front of me darkened. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light of the exit sign, his words started to set in my head. You will be arrested. I couldn't be arrested, not again, and especially not with robbery charges. Over the still air, a whistle was carried from deep within the museum. It tickled my ears with its swinging tune. With the lightest footsteps I could make, I reached the exit sign. Touching the cold metal made my hair stand on end as I gently pressed on the long bar until a loud click crashed through the room like a cymbal. The whistling stopped, and the silence became much louder. I looked around frantically, removing some of my precious light as my hair whipped around my face. If I was caught, I would have to look into my mother's eyes as she said, "I wouldn't be surprised if she did this, Judge." I couldn't hear that again. My eyes caught a big pot in the middle of the room. It was decorated with strips and little dancing people moving across the two-dimensional plane. As carefully as possible, I opened the lid and slipped my first leg into it. My footsteps sounded like a gong as I put my second in and slipped my body past the hole into the pot. Once the lid was over my head, I was in total darkness. Not even putting my hand in front of my face would give my eyes information. My breathing sounded like it was through a megaphone as it rose up and down, breathing in the clay, which was probably hundreds of years old. I tried to close my eyes, even though it changed nothing, and think about something other than where I was. The more I thought, the more my breathing sounded like it was coming from a tornado. My wind created gale force winds faster as I felt water drip onto my folded knees. My mind raced almost as fast. A thumping started to grow louder. At first, I thought it was from outside that he had found me. It kept getting faster, like he was running in place right outside my pot, teasing me with the promise of captivity, playing with me, just like his stupid voice played up and down like a carousel. I put a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. Thump, 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 thump. Over and over, like an incessant heartbeat, his feet went up and down and up and down. For minutes, his feet went on, just right outside my pot. The drips on my knees were getting bigger and more frequent, adding another sound to my existence. At any moment, he could just open the lid and get this all over with, but he was choosing to mess with me. Thump drip, over and over, faster and faster. I couldn't control my breath, and what did it matter if he was going to torment me? He knew I was there. All he had to do was open the lid and let the red light in. Let it flood in and wash over my face like a river, rinse away the guilt for just a brief moment. Instead, he chose to mess with me. He chose to step and step just outside my reach. I could barely control myself. I started to rock back and forth, and with me, the pot. Thump, drip, clang. Thump, drip, clang. I couldn't do it again. I didn't want to do it again. But when if he opened that lid, I would have to. He deserved it for stepping over and over. His never ending. Thump, thump, thump. My legs started to tingle with anticipation. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. My breath got faster as I stared at where I guessed the lid was. My pot rocked back and forth with me, getting ready for his fly-like hands to lift the lid. That's all he was, just a disgusting fly. But all he did was thump, thump, thump. I felt even more adrenaline burst through me as the rocking got faster, my breath got faster, and his shoes got faster. I have to. He'll get me if I don't. I have to. Rung through my head as the thump, thump, drip, thump, thump, clang rang on. A new sound sounded as a voice called out from the other side of the pot's walls. "Hey!" Another shot of adrenaline cracked open like lightning, and I could feel my legs practically vibrating from the sound. The thumping from his shoes meeting the hardwood floor, my breath at record-breaking speeds, the rocking only being contained by my leans, and drip dripping that reminded my legs to be ready. I want to do it again. I leaped out of the pot before his hand touched it. My head was buzzing with sounds, screams, thumps, tears, and then more screaming. Sounds of teeth on flesh and nails on muscle rang out throughout the silent museum like the most beautiful symphony. Thumps of bodies slamming on the ground, drips of ruby blood, and winds cut from hands swatting me away. I had done it again, and yet it did not go. Thump, 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 psst. Jill killed Jack. I very much need some socks, pretty please, with sugar on top. This was the text that I sent to my estranged ex-wife, the one who wanted to drag me out to the wilderness under the guise of talking about financing our first child's entrance into college. I knew that she was old-fashioned and wanted to push me from a hill, just like Fellini. So my last request was not very sinister. I mean, even death row inmates should get some free laundry or a meal. maybe even a prayer. I looked into the pantry of my rental and decided there was no good food. Bachelor food is disgusting when you leave it in the fridge for a week. I needed my dog. Hey, can we bring the dog? I knew that Caspian hated hiking just as much as me. It was like walking without purpose, like smelling flowers just to get allergies. I also knew that if Michelle threw me over a cliff and I was able to not immediately die, then Caspian the burner could theoretically pull me up with a rope. I decided to wear my flax Bermuda-styled shorts, which can be unwoven and turned into rope or a joint. She did not immediately text back and scold me for overpacking. This was a good sign because I had previously said I would find some kind of therapy. She wanted a stranger to break my will, make me cry, pay for the breaking, and send me back all trained. Also, I had a very large life insurance policy at the time. Husband therapy is kind of like dog training, but the wife forgets that she has to remember the commands, or the husband will forget, and the 2 weeks and $1,500 in Idaho won't take. She has to reinforce the electric shock therapy, the way the husband therapist swings a hand like windshield wipers and asks if my mother ever touched me inappropriately. It was just 38 minutes before the murder. Hike. In Knights of Calabria, Fellini taught us that a kind whore will get many marriage proposals, walk up to the mountain of love with all her savings, and get thrown over the mountain by her fake fiancé. I decided to pack like Fellini. I went up to my rented room and looked for all the things that could be lugged in a hefty garbage bag suitcase. There was the square bottle with a ship that my grandfather had constructed with tweezers. Nah, he's dead. There were piles of clothes on the ground. These kept me from bringing a drunk woman home. No one wants to make love next to dirty laundry. That's pretty gross if they do. I saw pictures of my kids when they were young and realized they were getting old, going to college, all taking medications to avoid giving me grandkids. I looked at the pillows. They were stiff, so I used them only to prop up a cell phone to watch Italian movies. It was better to pillow on a wad of sweaters and save the neck. I went into the closet and found my mafia money. It was just an envelope from the bank full of cash because I hate wasteful tipping. For some reason, the kids at the register have a very difficult time begging for tips of cash when they only punched in buttons. They do not have this problems with cards because they say, please follow the instructions on the screen when they ask for 30%, 40. One of the cashiers actually said my card was declined because he hit the 50% tip option for me. I use cash so the kids can beg like adults. There is no need for great cash when your former estranged spouse wants to go hiking in the wilderness. Also, I think she is bitter because of the dating. She pretends she doesn't mind that much, but always gets me drunk and asks for details. I don't know what I tell her half the time. I see a bottle of Canadian Mist, whiskey, that was purchased for toothaches and bladder infections. It is not a very good bottle of whiskey, but it is lightweight since half of it is missing. It is best to be slightly inebriated before being thrown off a cliff. Also, the fall hurts less. I packed the whiskey. Now my closet is executive clean. I have 10 handkerchiefs laid out in case one of the kids gets married. Handkerchiefs are the required minimum for a gentleman of the ages. You can offer the spare to a woman in tears. You can use the linen to avoid touching bathroom knobs. It makes a wonderful mask in the case of desperate last-minute need for larceny. I love handkerchiefs. I packed 10 in the garbage bag, knowing that large puncture wounds should be full of gauze. For this reason, I had to return the silk hankies. It is better for the absorbent cotton in case of a fall. What else? It was a tiny room with windows facing the main road in town. The firemen and police went up and down the road trying to find an entrance to Starbucks. They put in a one-way driveway to be tricky. I had some bills on my desk, but I didn't want to bring these to the afterlife. I decided to quickly pay for my parking bill because I didn't want my extra truck to get towed if I should be in the community hospital for very long. I said a small, "Thank you, God," because 2 of our 3 nurses had wanted to date, but you should never date medical people in a small town. Amputations happen when you are not a gentleman. What else? Sheets? Number comforter for comfort? Number Michelle had felt bad that I was cold without her cuddles and bought a comforter matching certain parts of her body. Peach. It was definitely a distraction if ever a gentleman has lady company. A man should have his bed colored in very serious colors, perhaps gray and black, and I needed a multi-tool. A multi-tool is the American version of a Swiss Army knife. It is neither a knife nor from the Swiss. Our multi-tools should be from Leatherman because they have pliers and blades, which do not fold back on fingers. They have finger locks. Unfortunately, I had the Lowe's knockoff multi-tool, which had already severed half of a finger. A nurse, who I did not date, stitched it back on with some weird thread that was supposed to dissolve. She kept sticking that fishhook needle and whispering, "Does it hurt? Does that hurt? What if I do this?" I didn't go back to remove the stitches, which didn't shrink or get dissolved. The nerve was actually clipped by the fake multi-tool, and I can feel the rain coming 5 days before the weatherman now. I put the multi-tool in the garbage bag with the whiskey and the handkerchiefs. 22 minutes. Now, in the smallest case that Michelle actually wanted to talk about paying for our kids' college and not throw me over the cliff, I was prepared to bring a checkbook. I would argue that the check should be endorsed to the child herself. Michelle would argue that kids might spend all the money drinking and whoring like their father. I resented that comment because our town didn't actually have any real prostitutes. In order to avoid the impasse of how the child will spend the money for education, Michelle would push me over the cliff, wait 6 weeks, and get my life insurance. She didn't like long and sustained arguments because she was taking yoga. I decided to bring my checkbook and not transfer any money into the account. What would they say? "We're sorry. He has the money in a money market, but we cannot legally transfer this money to you. Is he around?" Then she would feel really silly about kicking the goose over the glade. It is important for husbands and fathers to always be useful. Do not teach them how to start a BBQ grill. They will inevitably become vegans and hire a gardener. They will keep the seat down and the toothpaste caps fully engaged. The planned obsolescence of a man starts with money. Try to get your spouse fired. In my case, this was not possible. She worked for the state. So after so many decades, the man is not necessary. He must be thrown from the hill under the guise of good health. His dog may or may not follow, depending if the man fed the dog in the last few months. Dogs are ultimately loyal to the person who puts kibble in the bowl. It is nothing personal. 16 minutes to death. The waning sun reminded me, you could throw her down the hill. Wow, I never considered murder for life, insurance, or love. I never considered her last words. Would she fall down the hill and say, "I was just kid, ding"? Wow, this was huge. It didn't seem very noble to throw a former wife down a hill. I don't know what was going on with Jack and Jill, but I bet it wasn't his idea to get any water. Notice that Jack broke his crown, head, long before Jill slipped on the murder weapon. Moral: do not go up hills for water. Water likes to be lower due to gravity. I knew that a former spouse did not really care about my good health, never dying due to exercise, but I also felt she would bring me some socks out of duty. She is prideful like that. She wants her man to die with clean socks because a coroner will look for the meaning of death and should not be confused by bad odors, nor have to cut the socks off the body. They get stiff with grime. Also, 11 minutes. I really wanted to get some veneers before death. It seems really creepy to have a perfect white smile in death but hide the blemishes with a beard in life. The coffee struggle had taken its toll. I have never heard of anyone suing Starbucks for their loss of white. How would you even quantify the loss? You Honor, I was going to get a new hot wife, but I couldn't smile due to Starbucks stains. How much did that cost you, Mr. Go-Round? The lady from San Jose had stock options of Oracle. She's probably a billionaire. I lost this opportunity because of Starbucks stains. I would never smile. Can you show me your receipts? No, Honor. I paid in cash to avoid needless tipping. How do we know you didn't stain your teeth from Pete's coffee? Pete's roast gives me heartburn. Can you prove this heartburn? Ouch. It was going to be just like the cigarette debacle. If you smoke one Marlboro in your life, you cannot blame Camels for your cancer. Tobacco manufacturers know this and promote community smoking to destroy the single source theory. 7 minutes. In my last 7 minutes of life, before Michelle brought the dog in the Prius, before the socks were delivered, and she had a large aluminum canister of water filled with melatonin to knock me out at the summit. She knows I get sleepy near the summit. Contrary to popular notions, St. Bernards and their cousin dog, the Bernese mountain dog, do not actually have smelling salts in their saliva glands. They cannot lick you to consciousness. They usually have less than a tankard of whiskey around their neck, because the whiskey is meant to fortify the dog in bad weather. Some share, that is true. But mostly the large dog will watch you falling into snoring, as the Michelle commands that he uses his large head to push his former master over the hill. The dog will think it is just a game since his eyes are poor on telescopic visions. He cannot tell if the cliff is a few feet or a few leagues. He will actually get excited to be playing a lazy game where he doesn't have to fetch and get sweaty. My poor dumb dog will be an accomplice to murder. No, if not for my own sake, I must think of California law, how they will eventually kill Caspian because he was a man-killer. The law does not care if it was his idea or the woman. He will be taken to the Black Ops section of the SPCA and ethically sent to heaven. They are very moral about these things, and overcrowding is at an all-time high. Please remember to spray and neuter your pet to avoid euthanasia. My body? I need something reflective for the Air Force. She will probably bring me to Fort Ord to hike. They are an inactive Army base. This is why we need the Air Force to gather my remains. 1 minute. What the hell can they see from outer space? I decided to wrap myself in Mylar. I would go out looking like a Chinese spy balloon. Someone would find this story and know. It wasn't the dog's fault after all. I will try to come back to edit this. She just arrived with a Prius. The dog looks hungry, the heist connoisseur. I exited the world of Coca-Cola at 2:19 p.m. No sweat, no fear. After all, I've stolen from the greatest museums in the world. That said, my pocket did feel heavier. The one with my phone, which contained a picture of the original Coca-Cola secret formula. Only 2 senior executives know the formula entirely at any given time. It's that secret. Well, now there are 3. I crossed Baker Street onto Centennial Olympic Park. I scanned without appearing to scan and noticed 2 men in black suits. I increased my pace without drawing attention to myself. Could they be from the museum? Surely not. I would have noticed. Over the last 6 weeks, I've patiently cased the famous tourist trap, working as an electrician, my original calling, before becoming the world's most notorious burglar. I prefer heist connoisseur, but the FBI won't use it. To them, I'm just an ordinary thief. It's so hard to build one's brand. I stopped and sat on a park bench. The suits looked uncomfortable with my sudden inaction. They slowed but maintained their direction. They were following me. My photographic memory flipped through the museum's security personnel, and those two were not there. I got up and walked to them. We were surrounded by kids playing, lovers holding hands, and walkers listening to mumbled headphones. These two won't make a scene. I, on the other hand, will. It was easier to disappear in chaos. I love pizza on mountain roads if it's December, I said, looking in the opposite direction of the startled pair. What? One of the suits said. Come on. You must give the counter response or I'm out of here. They both squirmed. I couldn't have shocked them more had I stripped down to my tighty-whities and danced. We don't know what you're talking about. They attempted to move past me, but I intercepted them. All right, enough games. Why are you following me? They looked around as if trying to find the hidden candid camera. Face recognition. We've been sent to verify. Me? Which notorious criminal do I look like? Don Bard. The heist connoisseur. They tensed up. I tipped my hand. Only the FBI and I know that moniker, even if they pretend they don't. The suits drew their guns. I had already seen 2 police officers standing near a hot dog cart, only a stone's throw from us. I shouted "gun" and pointed at the 2 suits. The police officers reacted quickly. "Put the weapons down!" they shouted with their guns aimed at the men in black. The neckties dropped their guns and raised their hands. In the confusion, I disappeared among several walkers running from the chaos. I never looked back, but I overheard the 2 suits yelling, "We're FBI." I must be slipping. I know better than to allow a Big Brother camera to get a full view of my face. Perhaps I'm getting too old for this. It may be time to retire. They say you should retire at the pinnacle of your career. Is there any higher pinnacle than the Coke formula? The suits and cops should have made peace by now. I doubled back and sat on a bench, never leaving the park. The best place to hide is where you begin. No one ever thinks to look where they lost you. Now that I could sit peacefully, it was time to get the nerd working to sell this picture. "I've got the pic," the nerd texted back. "On it." How much is this adventure worth? Coke's retained earnings are a little shy of $75 billion. Imagine $75 billion. Now imagine $100 million. Both are impossible for the average Joe to wrap his brain around. But I've done the math. 100 million is only 0.133% of Coke's available cash. Not even 1%. My phone vibrated. Coke says they won't pay. Not surprised. Move on to other buyers. It's a dangerous game Coke is playing. Someone might buy it. If no one does, I'll fling the formula over the web. Nomads in the Arabian Peninsula will make Coke in their tents. 10 minutes later, Musk backed out. Pepsi still on the fence. I once considered stealing the Mona Lisa. Its estimated value is $1 billion. Coke could buy 75 Mona Lisas, but it won't toss me a measly 100 million. Pepsi got cold feet, afraid of repercussions. Plan C? Yes. That took me aback. I have enough plans to go through the alphabet twice, but I believed Pepsi would buy it, if for no other reason than to gift it back to Coke as a goodwill gesture. Imagine the free advertising. And on top of that, Pepsi would be seen as the biggest-hearted corporation of all time. Apple wants it, says they're going to make it better, the nerd texted. I have my standards, no changing what has worked. Number go to plan D. What's wrong with that fruity company? And what's up with the bite out of the apple? Is it Eve's apple, the one that caused the fall of man? Now that I think about it, that is a good logo for them. I put down the phone and took in the beauty. Trees rustling, squirrels nibbling, birds singing. Of course, cars honking, people shouting, runners thudding, and sirens blaring accompanied the otherwise tranquil symphony. Buzz. TikTok made an offer. I may be a thief, but I'm a patriotic thief. No exclamation mark. I was beginning to believe I'd have to follow through on my threat to release the formula on the web. Then my eyes read the text I was hoping to see. Coke called back, says they will pay. I remained unaffected on the outside, but fireworks went off inside. I was about to score my largest heist. Who knew a soft drink formula would bring in more than crown jewels, famous diamonds, and priceless works of art combined? Well, me, but I hate to toot my own horn. Send the picture. No copy. They will know. The nerd texted. My hand was shaking a bit. I pushed send. Oops. It's been over 6 months since my oops. Since then, the three who knew the formula have grown to over 8 billion. Coke attempted a campaign to impugn the release as a hoax. However, it failed after people started to taste the formula's results. I left Atlanta for a mountainous area where there are no Big Brother cameras. My piddly few million will have to suffice for my retired years. How could I continue heisting after such a bumbling mistake? I have to face it, I'm no longer fit to be the heist connoisseur.